Alright, so we've created our note object with all its methods and properties. Now what we need to do is we need to create a function that will actually load the database. Alright, so we're going to create a function called loaded. And we want this after the prototype. Alright, so you can see we have our note.prototype. Okay, that ends down here after this curly brace. So we want to get out of that. Alright, and we're going to create a function called loaded. It's not going to take any parameters. And basically we're going to do a transaction. So db.transaction, which will take a function and inside here what we want to do is we're going to count all the notes because we need that to properly run or create our load notes function. Alright, so this loaded function, we're going to count it and call the load notes function, which we haven't created yet, and we're also going to create our table called my stickies along with all of the fields, or I'm sorry, columns. So we're going to say tx.execute SQL, and we want to get the count, so we're going to say select count, pass in all from my stickies. Okay, and then we're going to pass in just an empty array, and then we're going to run a function. And I'm sorry, this double quote should have ended back here. Okay, now this function is going to take a result Alright, and then in here we're going to call the load notes function, which we haven't created yet. Alright, and then the next parameter here will be a function, and we'll pass in tx and error. Okay, and now what we're going to do is create the table. So we'll say tx.execute SQL and create table my stickies. Alright, and that's going to create the table. Now we want to pass in the fields that we want, or the columns that we want. So we want an ID. We're going to give it the properties real, unique. Unique meaning obviously there can't be two of the same IDs. And then we're going to have the note, which is basically going to be the text or whatever's typed in. And that's going to be a text field. Let's see, we'll have a timestamp. And we'll give that the real property as well. Okay, left is going to be a text field, as well as top will be text, and then we want z-index, which will be real. Alright, so now again we want to pass in an empty array and then another function with our result. And this is going to call load notes. And we'll create that now. So underneath loaded, let's create another function called load notes. Okay, so we're going to call it transaction. Alright, so tx.execute SQL, and we're going to say select ID note timestamp left top and z-index from the my stickies table. Okay. Do a function. I'm going to pass in tx and result here. Okay, now here we're going to create a for loop. All right, because we want to iterate through each note. So for, and we'll say variable I is going to be equal to 0. And then we're going to say as long as I is less than result dot rows dot length. Okay, so the number of notes in the database, and then we're going to increment I. Okay, now while we're inside of the loop, we're going to create a row, and that's going to be equal to result dot rows dot item, and I'm going to pass in the I variable, and then create a variable called note and create a new object, a new note object. So this is actually where the note gets instantiated. Okay, and then we'll set note.id is going to be equal to row. Okay, so we're getting all our fields are coming in through this row array. Alright, so the ID, and then we can set the note.text. Alright, we can set that to row note. Alright, and then the timestamp, note timestamp will be equal to row timestamp. We want the left position, note.left will be equal to row left top and the z-index, note.z-index equals row Alright, now what we want to do is find out if the current ID is larger than the highest ID, and if it is, we want to make the current ID the highest ID. Okay, so we're going to say if row ID is greater than the highest ID, then the highest ID is going to equal the row ID. Whoop. Keep thinking I'm typing PHP with the dollar sign. Alright, so highest ID equals row ID, and we're going to do the same thing with the index. The z-index. So I'll just copy that, and we're going to say z-index if row z index is greater than the highest z, then the highest z will equal the row index, z index. Alright, oh, I forgot a quote here. Alright, so that looks good. Alright, so after we do the for loop, we want to see if there's any more rows left. So if there's no result.rows.length, then we're going to call the new note function. Okay, and we'll create a new note. Alright, and I just want to add another parameter. Okay, and this is going to be a function. It's going to take tx and error, and what this is going to do is, this is the error, so this will just say failed to retrieve notes. So we'll send an alert. Failed to get notes. And we can put an error message here, so we'll just put a dash and then we'll concatenate on error dot message. So that'll give us the technical error message. Alright, so that looks good for the load notes function. The next thing I want to do is the modified string function. So basically this will put the timestamp string on the bottom of the note, and we called it up here somewhere. Where is it? Right here. Okay, so when we set the timestamp, we call this dot last modified dot text content. So basically what we want for the timestamp is going to be this modified string with the date passed to it. So down here we're going to say public function, not public, sorry about that, we're not doing that. Function modified string, and that's going to get the date passed into it. And we're basically just going to concatenate some text along with the date properties. So we'll say return, return, and then we'll say note, or actually let's say sticky last modified, and then we're going to concatenate on the, we'll say the year, so date dot, date dot get full year. And we'll say plus, and then we'll have a dash. Okay, so we'll do a dash, whoop, plus, and then quotes, dash. Alright, and then we'll say inside of parentheses we're going to say date dot get month, date dot get month plus 1, and then we'll do another dash, and we'll put the hours, so all the hour, date dot get hours, and then we want the minutes, so let's concatenate